It's 3 a.m. You're in a helium headspace. It's Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. The film My Favorite Year premiered on this day in 1982, directed by Richard Benjamin. It starred Mark Linn-Baker, Jessica Harper, Bill Macy, and Peter O'Toole, who as Alan Swann reflects, "People like me were targets. I'm blamed for a lot of things I had absolutely nothing to do with. On the other hand, because of who I am, I get away with murder in other areas. I suppose it all balances out in the end." It made $2.4 million its opening weekend and has since accumulated $20.1 million. Frank Herbert was born today 105 years ago in Tacoma, Washington, a man who would go on to build entire worlds out of words. Before Dune ever set foot on a publisher's desk, Herbert worked as a journalist, photographer, and speechwriter, chasing stories and sharpening his sense of how power really works. That obsession with systems of control, ecology, and belief became the beating heart of his fiction. When Dune appeared in 1965, it wasn't just another science fiction novel. It was a philosophical engine disguised as an adventure story. Herbert didn't worship heroes, he warned against them. He distrusted certainty, and he saw religion and politics as tools too easily twisted by ambition. Beneath the mistrust of power, his work carried a fierce reverence for life and the fragile balance that sustains it and the societies that blossom from it. Dune endures not because it predicts the future, but because it reveals how humanity repeats its past, always reaching for power it cannot quite control. Frank Herbert once said, "The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience." On the experience of reality, it's the birthday of the man who said, "Ordinary life is pretty complex stuff." Harvey Pekar was born today in 1939 in Cleveland, Ohio, a place he never left and never pretended was anything other than what it was. A file clerk by trade and a writer by compulsion, Pekar became the chronicler of ordinary American life through his long-running comic series American Splendor. His stories weren't about superheroes or cosmic wars. They were about traffic jams, backaches, dead-end jobs, and the strange poetry of grocery store aisles. Pekar believed the mundane could be art if you looked at it closely enough, and he looked hard. Working with artists like Robert Crumb, he turned himself, a grumpy, neurotic, endlessly self-scrutinizing man, into a kind of working-class philosopher. Where most writers sought meaning in adventure, Pekar found it in repetition. Chevy Chase was born today in 1943 in Lower Manhattan, and his life and personality might well be summed up by his oft-repeated line, "I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not." His willingness to trip, fall, and keep a straight face about it ensured his spot with the original cast of Saturday Night Live in 1975, where his dry, patrician delivery on Weekend Update made the absurd feel like official news. Chase had an aristocratic air that clashed amusingly with the slapstick chaos he embodied. He could look like the most confident man in the room while fumbling down a flight of stairs. His later success in National Lampoon's Vacation and its sequels cemented him as the ideal flawed American dad, smug, oblivious, and occasionally redeemed by decency. Yet for all his comic precision, Chase never seemed entirely comfortable with fame. He's a man whose career often feels like a brilliant accident he never quite decided to enjoy. Today in 1720, Jonathan Mayhew entered the world in colonial Boston, a place already humming with debates over faith, governance, and personal liberty. He would grow into a congregational minister whose sermons carried a clarity and fire that few could ignore, not merely preaching piety, but insisting that conscience, the individual's moral compass, could not be shackled by crown or church. He once said, "A liberty not guided by conscience is mere license. Conscience not defended is lost liberty." Mayhew's voice rang in a period when the American colonies were testing the boundaries of obedience, and his writings and sermons offered intellectual ammunition for those who would soon speak of revolution. He argued, boldly for his time, that tyranny, whether political or spiritual, must be resisted, and that freedom of thought and expression were not gifts, but rights. His eloquence bridged theology and political philosophy, reminding his listeners that God's law did not require blind subservience, but demanded moral responsibility and courage. Mayhew's influence was subtle yet profound, feeding a growing consciousness that liberty was inseparable from conscience, and that dissent, when grounded in reason and faith, was honorable rather than sinful. 80 years ago today, a rather unassuming but revolutionary moment in kitchen history quietly took shape when Raytheon submitted Percy L. Spencer's first U.S. patent application for the microwave heating of food. Percy, born in 1894, was an inventive soul with a knack for noticing curious little effects in his experiments. One famous story has him realizing popcorn could pop from the stray microwaves of a radar tube he was testing. This was no kitchen accident, it was the germ of an entirely new method of cooking. The patent was granted in 1950, ushering in a technology that would eventually transform how millions prepare meals, from frozen dinners to reheated coffee. Spencer himself was a pragmatic, curious mind, more fascinated with problem solving than fame. He didn't seek glory for inventing what would become a household staple. He simply observed, experimented, and built. He once said, "I never set out to invent anything. I just watched what happened. And from that, humans got an entirely new way to heat food." Today in 1829, in the small Lancashire town of Rainhill, Britain witnessed a contest that would shape the arteries of industrial progress for centuries to come. George Stephenson, a man born in 1781, had spent his life amidst coal dust and iron rails, dreaming of machines that could haul people and goods faster than any horse. His creation, the rocket, was not merely a contraption of pipes, pistons, and wheels. It was a declaration that steam power could master both speed and reliability. It was at the Rainhill trials, in which a spirited competition meant to prove which locomotive could safely and efficiently traverse a set course, the rocket outclassed its rivals, winning the hearts of engineers and investors alike. Stephenson's triumph was not just mechanical, but visionary. He demonstrated that railways could become the backbone of industry, linking cities and towns with a precision and pace previously unimagined. The success of the rocket made Britain the proving ground for a transportation revolution, one that would soon ripple across continents, reshaping commerce, travel, and the very perception of distance itself. In Stephenson's hands, engineering became a form of eloquence, and the whistle of a locomotive spoke louder than any sermon about progress. George Stephenson, who said, "I do not invent things, I discover them." And those are some of the things we humans have done over the years. Do the useful thing, say the courageous thing, contemplate the beautiful thing. That is enough. Please follow, like, and subscribe.